My sister stole my research and won a prestigious scholarship, leaving me with nothing. I let her take the credit until the final presentation, where the advanced formula she presented contained a hidden code that spelled out my name and her betrayal in public. I still remember the first time I noticed something was off. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation or a loud argument. It was subtle, quiet, almost invisible to anyone else. My sister had started hovering around me more often, asking questions about my research that she had never cared about before. At first, I thought she was simply curious, maybe even proud of me. She'd lean over my desk, pretending to admire the pages of notes and formulas I had scribbled down, her voice soft and encouraging. "You're really onto something," she'd say, smiling in that way that made me believe she meant it. But behind that smile there was something I didn't catch at the time. A hunger, a calculation. Her interest grew quickly. She began borrowing my notebooks, claiming she wanted to help me organize them. I didn't think twice. She was my sister after all. Trust was natural, unquestioned. But slowly, I noticed her questions weren't just casual. They were precise, targeted. She wanted details about my methods, the reasoning behind each step, the way I had built the formula piece by piece. I brushed it off, telling myself it was harmless. Yet deep down, a faint unease stirred. The day of the scholarship announcement arrived like a storm. I stood in the crowded hall, surrounded by students, professors, and families, waiting for the results. My heart raced, not with excitement but with dread I couldn't explain. When the announcer called her name, the room erupted in applause. My sister walked proudly to the stage, her head held high, her smile wide. She accepted the award as if she had earned it through sleepless nights and endless effort. I clapped too, my hands moving mechanically while inside me something broke. The formula she had presented was mine. Every line, every calculation, every breakthrough, it was all my work. And yet I stood there, invisible, watching her bask in the glory that should have been mine. At home the celebration continued. My parents were overjoyed, showering her with praise, calling her brilliant and gifted. They spoke of her future, of the doors this scholarship would open. I sat quietly at the dinner table, my plate untouched, my voice silenced. No one asked me how I felt. No one noticed the way my hands trembled or the way my eyes avoided theirs. I was a shadow in my own family, erased by her triumph. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. I thought about the time she had borrowed my notes, the way she had smiled while pretending to support me, the way she had stood on that stage as if she had built the formula herself. Anger burned inside me, sharp and relentless. I wanted to scream, to expose her, to tell everyone the truth. But I didn't. I convinced myself that silence was safer. If I spoke up, it would tear the family apart. They wouldn't believe me anyway. She had already won their hearts. Still, silence didn't mean surrender. As I lay there, the seed of revenge took root. I promised myself that she wouldn't walk away with my life's work without facing the truth. I didn't know how or when, but I knew I would find a way. My mind began to turn slowly, carefully, shaping the idea of justice. It wasn't about shouting or accusing. It was about patience, about waiting for the right moment. In the days that followed, I watched her closely. She strutted around the house, bragging about her scholarship, telling relatives how hard she had worked. I smiled politely, nodding when she spoke, but inside I was studying her, memorizing her arrogance, storing away every detail. Each word she spoke fueled my determination. She thought she had won. He thought I was too weak to fight back. But she didn't know me as well as she believed. One evening, she left her laptop open on the dining table. I glanced at the screen and saw my formula staring back at me, dressed up in her name, her title, her victory. My chest tightened, but instead of despair, I felt a strange calm. Seeing my work under her name didn't crush me, it strengthened me. It reminded me of what I had lost and what I was determined to reclaim. I began to keep a journal, not of my research but of my thoughts, my plans, my anger. Each entry was a reminder of why I couldn't let this go. I wrote about the silence at the dinner table, the applause in the hall, the way my parents' eyes had shone with pride for her but never for me. I wrote about the betrayal, the theft, the injustice. And with each word my resolve grew stronger. The silent theft wasn't just about losing credit for my work. It was about losing my identity, my place in the world, my voice. She had stolen more than a formula. She had stolen the recognition that defined me. But I wasn't going to let her keep it. I didn't know yet how I would strike back, but I knew one thing with certainty. When the time came, it would be undeniable, unforgettable, and impossible for her to escape. And so I waited. Quietly. Patiently. Watching her bask in her stolen glory, while inside me, the fire of revenge burned brighter with every passing day. The fire inside me had grown steady, no longer wild and chaotic. It was focused now, sharpened into something deliberate. I knew I couldn't confront her with words. She had already won the family, the professors, the scholarship committee. But numbers, formulas, and logic, those were mine. That was where I could fight back. I sat at my desk late one evening, the lamp casting a pale circle of light over my papers. My formula lay before me, the very one she had stolen. I began to rework it, carefully adjusting the equations, shifting symbols, and weaving in a hidden code. To anyone else, it looked like a flawless piece of advanced mathematics. But to me, it was a message. Each variable, each letter, each subtle alignment carried meaning. When read in sequence, it spelled out my name and her betrayal. It was my secret weapon, invisible to the untrained eye, yet undeniable once revealed. The nights that followed were sleepless. I would lie down, close my eyes, and then sit up again, restless. My mind refused to rest until every detail was perfect. I scribbled notes until my fingers cramped, erased entire sections, and rewrote them with precision. I tested the code repeatedly, making sure it would appear naturally within the formula, impossible to dismiss as coincidence. The exhaustion weighed on me, but the thought of her standing on stage presenting my work kept me awake. I wasn't just building a trap. I was reclaiming my voice. During those days, I had small encounters with her that tested my patience. She would walk into my room humming cheerfully and talk about her upcoming presentation. "They're going to be so impressed," she said one afternoon, twirling a pen in her hand. "I've practiced my speech 3 times already." I smiled politely, nodding as if I were proud of her. Inside, though, I was holding back the storm. Every word she spoke was another reminder of her arrogance. Another push to perfect my plan. One evening she caught me staring at my notes. "Still working on your little projects?" she asked, her tone dripping with condescension. I forced a laugh. "Yes, just keeping myself busy." She shrugged, clearly uninterested, and walked away. That moment strengthened me. She had no idea what I was building, no clue that her downfall was hidden in the very formula she thought she owned. As the day of the event drew closer, the tension grew heavier. I rehearsed my own reactions in the mirror, imagining the moment when the truth would unfold. Would I smile? Would I remain stone-faced? I pictured the audience's response. The professors leaning forward, the whispers spreading, the shock in their eyes. I imagined my parents' faces, the disbelief, the realization. Each rehearsal gave me a strange sense of control, as if I were already living the moment. I also prepared myself for the possibility of doubt. What if they didn't see it? What if they dismissed the code as coincidence? I adjusted the formula again, making the message clearer, sharper, undeniable. I wasn't leaving room for chance. This wasn't just about exposing her. It was about ensuring that the truth could not be ignored. In those final days, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Calm. For the first time since the scholarship announcement, I wasn't drowning in anger or despair. I carried a quiet confidence, knowing that justice was built into the very formula she planned to present. I didn't need to shout, I didn't need to argue. The truth was already written, waiting to reveal itself. One night as I closed my notebook, I whispered to myself, "It's ready." The trap was complete. My sleepless nights, my careful planning, my silent endurance, all of it had led to this. She thought she had stolen my future, but she was about to walk straight into the snare I had set. And when she did, there would be no escape. The morning of the presentation arrived with a strange stillness. I woke early, not from excitement, but from the weight of anticipation pressing against my chest. My hands were steady, my mind clear. The trap was ready, and today it would be set in motion. The hall was grand, filled with polished wooden chairs and banners celebrating academic excellence. Professors in crisp suits, scholars with notebooks in hand, and proud families gathered, their voices blending into a low hum of expectation. I slipped into the back row unnoticed, blending into the crowd like a shadow. My sister stood near the stage, radiant in her confidence, shaking hands, laughing, basking in admiration. She looked untouchable, as though the world belonged to her. When the lights dimmed and the announcer introduced her, she walked to the podium with a grace that made the audience lean forward. Her voice rang out clear and proud as she began her speech. Today, I present an advanced formula that represents months of dedication and innovation, she declared. Each word dripped with pride, each gesture rehearsed to perfection. She spoke as though she had built the formula from the ground up, unaware that every syllable carried the seeds of her downfall. The screen behind her lit up with the formula. At first, it looked like a complex arrangement of symbols and numbers, impressive to the untrained eye. She explained each step with confidence, her tone steady, her smile unwavering. But then slowly the whispers began. A professor leaned closer to the screen, squinting. Another tilted his head, murmuring to his colleague. The letters were forming. My name hidden within the equations, emerging like a ghost from the numbers. And beneath it, the words of betrayal, undeniable and sharp. The room shifted. The applause that had been ready to erupt froze in silence. A ripple of confusion spread, then shock. Wait, one professor said aloud, pointing at the screen. Do you see that? Another stood, adjusting his glasses. This isn't coincidence. It's deliberate. My sister faltered, her voice catching mid-sentence. She turned to the screen, her smile fading, her eyes widening as she finally saw it. My parents, seated near the front, turned pale. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, my father's brow furrowed in disbelief. They looked from the screen to her, then back again, their pride collapsing into confusion. The audience buzzed with questions, voices overlapping, demanding explanations. Whose name is that? What does this mean? Did you create this formula yourself? My sister stammered, her words tangled. I don't know how that got there, she said, her voice trembling. But the professors weren't convinced. One of them, a stern man with years of experience, stood and addressed her directly. This formula carries a coded message. It spells out your sibling's name. Are you telling us you didn't notice this in your own work? She froze, unable to answer. The silence stretched, heavy and damning. I sat in the back row, calm, my hands folded neatly in my lap. I didn't need to speak. The truth was already on the screen, undeniable, undeniable. The questions grew sharper. Did you take credit for someone else's research? How long have you been presenting this as your own? My sister's face flushed, her confidence shattered. She looked around desperately, searching for support but found none. Even our parents avoided her gaze, their expressions filled with disappointment and shame. I felt the weight lift from my chest, a quiet victory blooming inside me. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat. I simply watched as the truth unraveled her carefully built facade. The trap had worked exactly as I intended. The professors conferred among themselves, their voices low but firm. One finally spoke to the audience. This scholarship was awarded under false pretenses. The evidence here is clear. We will be reviewing this matter immediately. Gasps filled the room and my sister's shoulders slumped, her head bowed. I rose from my seat not to confront her but to leave. My steps were steady, my heart light. I didn't need applause, I didn't need recognition. The truth had spoken louder than I ever could. As I walked out of the hall, I felt the air shift around me, free of the burden I had carried for so long. Justice had been served, not through anger or accusation, but through patience, precision, and quiet resolve. And as the doors closed behind me, I knew she would never forget the day her betrayal was revealed. Not by my voice, but by the very formula she had stolen.